Now, before we get down to the chassis, just a very quick reminder of what we're doing. We're refurbishing this Mk1 Hornby carriage that was brought to me by a friend of mine, and I was super excited about it because purely by chance I've got one as well. So we'll have a really good opportunity to compare one that hasn't been refurbished and improved against the finished product from this project. So the chassis itself, and the eagle-eyed will have noticed straight away that there are no wheels on this chassis. Why? Well, that's because they're off to one side. I've already taken those out. They do just clip off, and the reason why I've taken those out will become apparent in this video. Now, I looked at a lot of pictures of Mk1 coaches, and indeed other coaches as well, when I started this project, because one thing that immediately struck me was the one colouring that applied to the chassis and of course the interior that we dealt with on the last video, and I wanted to do something about that. It's clear to me that when a coach or a piece of rolling stock has been in use, it acquires some dirt and grime, and black is not really the appropriate colour. So what did I do? Well, let's just turn this one over, and you can see the very first beginnings of weathering. All I've done is taken the edges of the chassis that are going to be visible as it rolls around the track on the layout back where it lives, and started by painting them a brown. I'm going to do the bogies as well, and that's part of the reason why the wheels have been removed. So initially the chassis has been given a coat of XF72. This is a Tamiya paint. Why this one? Well, it's about the right shade of brown, and it's what I had in the cupboard. And I really am keen to pursue keeping costs down in model making. For those of you who didn't see my rant video a couple of videos ago, going on about the prices of new models and how our hobby is in danger of dying out, why not use something that we've got already in stock as a base coat rather than spending £15 on a tub of dedicated colour match paint. Now, the next step in the process is to apply this same base coat to the other side of the chassis and of course the two ends as well. I'm not going to go mad with the ends of the chassis because the dirt accumulation really would be mostly on the sides of the vehicle. Now, as I've already mentioned, the wheels have been removed, and you can see that the axles are a little bit rusty, and the wheels themselves of course have accumulated a great deal of dirt over their use, so we're going to clean those up. You might want to consider changing the wheels and indeed the couplings as well, but for the purposes of this project and in keeping with the philosophy of reducing cost where we can, we're going to clean these wheels and repurpose and reuse them on this model rather than buying new. I've taken them out for the purposes of cleaning, but also of course very shortly I'm going to paint the Bogey, both bogies actually, on this chassis. And if you look very carefully to where the wheels were sitting, you'll notice that there is a great accumulation of dirt and dust and grime there. So they're going to get cleaned before we proceed with painting the bogies, and also that gives us the benefit of applying a tiny drop of oil or white grease or some form of lubrication to those sockets that the axles will sit in, and that will hopefully improve the running of the coach itself. So you can see now that we've cleaned the sockets for the axles on both bogies and on both sides of course. How much dirt came out? Well, let's have a quick look. And that might not look like a lot, but it certainly is enough to interfere with the smooth running of our rolling stock. And now of course we've painted both sides in our base colour and of course the ends as well. Now, I am a model maker of well over 50 years experience, and I'm used to doing this sort of work, but I did promise you a hot tip, and here it is, a block of wood. What good is that, I hear you ask? Please ask. Can't hear you. Oh dear. Well, on our chassis we have two holes, one here and one a little bit further along. And those are the holes that were occupied by the screws that join the whole assembly, the chassis, the interior and the body together. How can that help us? Well, we can use those holes to insert a couple of screws, one there, and now we've got our chassis fixed to a block of wood. And that means that it's a lot easier for us to handle our chassis and apply paint. And once we've done that, we just leave it upside down and let it dry without any fear of our painted surfaces touching another surface and interfering with our craft work. So now we've applied our base coat to the bogies as well, and I've treated both outer edges of the bogies on both sides, and also the part that you wouldn't necessarily see, but the ends there and the other inner edge there as well. Now, of course, at this point the rivet counters are probably screaming and going on about, oh, it would never be like this, it would never be like that. Well, who cares, quite frankly? All my videos, every single one of my videos on my channel is about getting young people to join the hobby. And to do that, we need to have some basic skills, utilise what we have and reduce costs. If we don't do these things, the hobby really will die out. So that's our base coat of weathering applied to our chassis. We'll let that dry and then I'll show you what comes next. Okay, so now the base coat has dried and it already looks a lot more realistic. And it's time to add a little bit more detail. Slight change of brush. The base coat that you're looking at was applied with this type of brush. Might be a 00 or an O, who knows. Now we're going to go to a flat brush. So now we need to add a little bit more detail, and for that I've got another Tamiya product, X1 black. I think it was a gloss, cannot remember. Really don't care that much. But remember my tip, remember my advice. This pot of paint was near the end of its life. I added some dilution to it, an acrylic thinner, and now I have myself a black wash. You don't need to spend the money on these really expensive dilutions and washes for your weathering or any other type of need. The process itself couldn't be more simple. One dip of the brush into the solution, select the target and apply. And just brush it away. Just brush it away. That's one bogey. That's the other side of the chassis on this one. And now, of course, we've got these boxes in the middle. We'll just put a little bit on there as well. Not so much. Just brush that off. And apply it. This is exactly the same technique that I used in weathering my model bus a few videos ago, and if you missed it, have a look. Old bus, new bus, which is best? And we're really just dabbing on the colour here. We're not after a uniform finish. We're not after a perfect paint job. All we want is to add some variation to our model, and we're doing it as cheaply and as easily as we can, in keeping with the philosophy here at St Blazey Model World. So now we've treated our chassis with a black wash, and I appreciate the light is not the best. It's absolutely siling down outside, couldn't really do it outside. But you can see the effects of the black wash when it's been applied over the base colour. And I quite like that. And it certainly looks realistic and gives a much more, genuine sort of feel to the model as opposed to the one colour of black that we started with. Now about these wheels, you can see that the axles are rusty and the wheels themselves have accumulated a certain amount of grime and dirt, as they would have done over the age of this particular model. I actually quite like that sort of rusty axle. I think it looks pretty good, but for the purposes of the project we've cleaned up one of the axles and the wheels, and we're going to treat the rest in exactly the same way. So let's have a look at one that we have cleaned up just over here, and you can see that we've removed the rust from the axle and we've also cleaned the wheels. And when I say we've cleaned the wheels, we really have. It may not show up on the camera on the film particularly well, but we have removed a large amount of grime from the wheel's surface that's in contact with the rails, as well as the flange on the wheel itself. And this is important because we want to make sure that our reassemble project runs as smoothly as possible. Now you have to be careful when cleaning up these axles and wheels. We don't want to create flat spots, and we certainly don't want to overdo it. I've reverted to one of my favourite model making gadgets, and that is the emery board. Here is one, and these are used to file down fingernails mainly, and you can see on the fine side, because that's what I've used, the amount of dirt that has come off of the axle. And here you can see the effect. Of course, the one nearest the camera is the one that has been treated with the emery board and has removed a great deal of rust from the axle itself. And I hope you'll agree that the wheels as well look an awful lot cleaner than they did. Now when it comes to cleaning the wheels, I've reverted to my cleaner of choice, which is nail polish remover. And again, it's just a very basic one that's available pretty well in every corner shop, certainly here in the UK. Costs absolutely nothing to buy really, and that really has made a difference. And so the next step on the journey is to treat the remaining 3 axles and all of the wheels in the same way, and then we'll look at reassembly. So there is our white grease sprayed onto our cutting board, and all we need to do to apply this to the sockets that the axles will sit in is to take our flat brush that we used earlier in this project, we dip it in, and we just apply a tiny bit to each socket on each bogey, and that's all we need to do. It's very, very simple. Just in case you're worrying about that grease being on a paintbrush, it is extremely lightweight grease, and a simple wash of the paintbrush in washing up liquid and warm water will remove all traces from it. As for the white grease residue on our cutting board, well of course that's simply wiped away. And there we have it, a refurbished chassis. I hope you'll agree that it's starting to come along quite well. Of course we've yet to tackle the main part of the project, the bodywork, and that will form part 3 of this mini-series. Please remember to subscribe. By all means, of course, give this video a thumbs up or even a thumbs down. Leave a comment if you have the time. No pressure, no obligation. St Blazey Model World wishing you all the best. Stay safe. Take care. Bye for now.